Ben Crump is a well-known civil rights attorney. He's also helping to represent the family of Tyre Nichols. He was at that arraignment today, and Ben, as always, thanks for being with us. The next court date is until May, with some of the courts saying that there needs to be some discovery that will be collected. We know that there is more body cam footage. Have you seen that footage, and what does it show?
We have not seen that footage. We've been told there is additional footage that exists that will be shown to the family before it is revealed to the public. And we also know that the prosecutor shared with the family today about these rumors about there being some personal involvement with this assault and battery and brutality of Tyre Nichols was completely unfounded, that the officer who took the photographs with his cell phone sent them to 6 people. None of those people had any relations or connections to Tyre Nichols at all.
Rovon Wells, Tyre's mother, actually sat in the courtroom today and watched the officers who she said wouldn't even look at her. I want our viewers to hear this again. This is what she said.
I want each and every one of those police officers to be able to look me in the face. They haven't done that yet. They couldn't even do that today. They didn't even have the courage to look at me in my face after what they did to my son. So they're going to see me at every court date, everyone.
Exactly.
And until we get justice for my son.
Ben, she was at the State of the Union address. She talked to our cameras right afterwards. Where is she getting the strength to do this?
You know, she said she's getting it from prayer. She talked about the fact that she was numb as she went into the courtroom, but she had to be there because she wanted to look the killers of her son in the face. And as she said, none of them even had the courage to look her in the face.
Does she understand? One of the things that she said she was angry about is the fact that they wouldn't look her in the eye and that they also entered pleas of not guilty. Does she understand the legal system and why they entered pleas of not guilty? And if you explained it to her, what did you tell her?
I told her that in America, we all have a presumption of innocence until proven guilty in the court of law. That is the very foundation of our jurisprudence in America, that everybody gets due process of the law. So she understood that, but it doesn't take away from the pain and the bitterness of these police officers who were supposed to protect and serve her, treating her son so inhumanely as they murdered him. And she wanted to have them look in her eyes so she could say, just with her eyes, not yelling out or anything at them, just say, how could you do this to another human being? How could you literally beat my son to death?
I want to play what happened in court today. It was very quick. This is a small clip for our viewers of the officers pleading not guilty.
Good morning, Your Honor. John Perry on behalf of Mr. Kadarius Bean. At this time, we waive the formal reading of the indictment off to the court. A plea of not guilty.
Mr. Summers, I see you back there.
Yes, Your Honor. On behalf of my client, Justin Smith, Charles Summers, we waive the formal reading of the indictment and then plead not guilty on behalf of Mr. Smith.
The audience has seen the videotape. Explain to the audience these not guilty pleas when the body cam video shows them really beating him, and we all know that he died 3 days later.
Well, obviously, there are going to be a lot of finger pointing at one another, saying that, well, I was just there, that I wasn't as brutal as my fellow officer. But remember, when you look at these charges, it's anybody who could have been a proximate cause of the death of him. And so it is going to be very interesting. They're going to say, oh, well, it was the punches that killed him. No, it was the kicks that killed him. No, it was the baton sticks that killed him. So they are going to be pointing fingers at each other. But I think at the end of the day, all of them, as the prosecutor has charged, are guilty of being responsible for the second-degree murder of Tyre Nichols, and they certainly all have been guilty of all those other charges like obstruction of justice and official oppression. It is clear from that video they all are guilty of that.
Do you expect them all to be tried together, or do you think that they will try to sever their cases from each other to be tried separately?
Well, I think they're going to try to sever their cases from each other, but I hope the judge, for judicial economy and also for what the police chief said, Chief Davis, that it's important that we move swiftly to justice, that they will all be tried together. So there would be no jury conflict, contradictions of one another. There would be one jury verdict, and they say who was responsible. If all of them or if 3 were responsible and 2 of them wasn't, we would have one consistent verdict. That is important for this family. This is important for America.
If we learned anything from the release of the videotape, it was that there were more than 5. And we're now starting to find out about the paramedics, and we're starting to find out about other officers who might have been on the scene. If you could hesitate a guess, how many more officers and paramedics do you think will face criminal charges?
I think certainly the police officer, Hill, who fired the taser, should be charged with something, but I cannot tell you as I sit here today who else would be charged, but I know the federal Department of Justice is looking at this case very hard, and I would not be surprised if, like in George Floyd's tragic killing, like in Ahmaud Arbery's tragic killing, that there are going to be federal charges brought as well. And those federal charges may be more people than just the 5 black officers that have been charged thus far.
Final question before I let you go. These officers were part of what was called the Scorpion Unit, which is one of those units that we've seen in so many cities to go root out what they call the bad crime cases. Do you think Maine Justice should be reviewing all of these units in cities across the country?
I absolutely do, because it seems that the Scorpion Unit had a pattern and practice of violating the constitutional rights and the human rights of citizens in black and brown communities. They were not doing this, violent, aggressive policing in the white community, but they were doing it in the black communities. And Memphis is not specifically the only city that does this. In Atlanta, Georgia, they had the jump out boys called the Red Dog Unit that was very similar to the Scorpion Unit. In every major city, they have this component in policing that says it's okay for you to violate the constitutional rights in this part of town with this ethnicity, a group of people. And that is not America. You can't have one set of policing for one community and another set for another community, or one set of laws for this community or another set for that community. Tyre Nichols is dead because the leadership in Memphis said that you can do this aggressive, brutal, unconstitutional policing in the black community. And they had done this several times before.
Civil rights attorney Ben Crump, who represents the family of Tyre Nichols. Ben, thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me.